Australia is a land of ancient legends, stories whispered across thousands of years, carved into stone, sung through generations. Most people know the Outback as a place of scorching heat and deadly creatures. But deep in the wetlands, in the murky waters of swamps and billabongs, there's something far older, something that waits, something hungry. The Aboriginal people have always known its name. They call it the Bunyip. The word Bunyip roughly translates to devil or spirit in several Aboriginal dialects. But even that doesn't capture the full terror of what this creature represents. It's been described in a dozen different ways, sometimes as a monstrous seal with walrus-like tusks and glowing red eyes. Other times it's a reptilian horror with slick black skin, long claws, and a mournful, echoing wail. Some say it has feathers, others swear it slithers, but everyone agrees on one thing. It lives in the water, and if you get too close, it takes you. European settlers in the 1800s laughed at those stories, at least at first. Then the disappearances started. Livestock vanishing without a trace, children dragged from the edges of creeks, a loud, unearthly bellowing echoing across the floodplains just before dawn. In 1845, the Sydney Morning Herald published an article describing a strange set of bones which had been found in a nearby river. Enormous, misshapen, with a skull unlike anything naturalists had ever catalogued. Locals were convinced it belonged to a bunyip. The remains were sent to a museum in Sydney and mysteriously disappeared. Today, the bunyip is often reduced to a cartoonish myth, a tale to scare kids away from dangerous waters. But in the forgotten corners of the bush, places where GPS doesn't work, where the reeds grow thick and the sky turns black without warning, the fear remains. And not all the stories are as old as you think. Ben and Rachel Green were on a weekend camping trip with their son, Noah, near Gunbower Creek in Victoria. It was supposed to be a peaceful getaway. Fishing, kayaking, stories around the fire. But on the second night, things changed. Rachel claimed she heard a low moaning sound coming from the water around midnight. Ben thought it was just cattle, but then they noticed the reeds near the bank were swaying, despite there being no wind. The family dog, Murphy, began growling at the darkness. Minutes later, it ran toward the water and vanished. No splash, no bark. It was just gone. The next morning, they found massive gouge marks in the muddy bank, clawed tracks leading back into the water, and a single paw print the size of a dinner plate. The Greens left that day and they never returned. Aboriginal elders warn that the bunyip is a protector. You don't go near its water, especially at night, and especially when the moon is new. They say it punishes those who disturb sacred lands, those who pollute the rivers, and those who don't listen to the old ways of living. They tell of a humming sound, low, rhythmic, almost like chanting. The unlucky ones hear it just before they're taken. Others say it mimics the cries of a baby to lure people in, a soft whimper just beneath the surface. And if you answer it, it drags you under. In 1993, an amateur diver named Leon Curran entered a partially flooded cave system near Coorong National Park. He was documenting freshwater ecosystems for a university project. He never resurfaced. His dive partner Martin waited on the bank and claimed he heard a scream, bubbled, gurgling, and then a strange rumble like something massive shifting beneath the water. Liam's body was never recovered, but his camera was. The footage was water damaged except for one frame. It shows Liam inside a submerged cavern, turning toward the lens in panic. Behind him, half shrouded in silt and shadow, a wide, gaping mouth and eyes that don't reflect light. From the swamps of South Australia to the billabongs of New South Wales, even reaching up to parts of Queensland, legends of the Bunyip span the entire country. It's not confined to one place. It goes where the water flows. Seasonal floods, forgotten lagoons, and underground springs. You don't find the Bunyip. It finds you. Some believe the Bunyip is a remnant from an ancient age, a prehistoric beast that escaped extinction. Others say it's a spirit, an elemental force tied to the land and water, enraged by the damage done to both. But there's one theory, more disturbing than the rest, that there's not just one Bunyip, but there are many, sleeping beneath the mud, waiting for its next victim. In 2022, a trio of TikTok adventurers tried to film a Bunyip challenge near Lake Wendouree, mocking the legend, throwing garbage into the water, and taunting it. Only one of them made it back. His footage, quickly deleted but archived by a few viewers, shows a dark figure rising behind his friend in waist-deep water. A terrible shriek, then the camera drops. The survivor, Marcus Dale, was found the next day. His fingernails torn off, his body covered in mud and scratches. All he could say over and over was, "It had no face, just teeth." The next time you hear a splash in the water, the next time you feel like something is watching you from the reeds, don't look, don't speak, and don't move. Because the Bunyip doesn't need to chase you, because it's already beside you. They call it Australia's Bigfoot, a myth, a joke, a blurry shape in the bush that skeptics dismiss and thrill seekers chase. But those who've seen it, truly seen it, don't laugh. They don't sleep well either, and some never come back to tell the tale at all. Its name is the Yowie, and in the endless ancient wilds of Australia, it waits. The legend of the Yowie goes back far beyond colonial times. Aboriginal stories tell of the Yahoo or Yowie, massive ape-like beasts that roam the deep forest and mountain ranges. In some regions, they're seen as protectors of the land. In others, there's something far darker. Predators, spirits of vengeance, beings not meant for the human world. Standing anywhere from 7 to 12 feet tall, the Yowie is said to be covered in thick, matted hair, with long arms that almost touch the ground. It reeks of decay and wet fur. Its face, human but wrong. Too flat, too wide. The eyes are deep set and black, not reflective, and it almost doesn't even look alive. The Blue Mountains, the Snowy River, the Gold Coast hinterland, all are Yowie territory, and for every reported sighting, there are others that go unspoken. Because those who've encountered it know, talking about the Yowie doesn't make it go away. It might just make it follow you. One of the earliest colonial records comes from 1871. A newspaper in New South Wales reported a terrifying creature seen near Bateman's Bay, described by locals as a hairy man, larger than any known animal. But settlers weren't the first to see it. For thousands of years, Aboriginal tribes have spoken of these beings. Some warn to never enter certain valleys, especially at night. Others say the creatures communicate with each other through howls and tree knocks, mimicking the sounds of the bush to confuse and even trap their prey. In 1977, a group of teenagers camping near Springbrook National Park were awakened by a low, rumbling growl just before dawn. They claimed to see a giant hulking shape moving between the trees. When it passed, the forest fell silent. Not a bird, not a breeze, just an unnatural stillness. They found massive footprints in the mud, each nearly twice the size of a human's, with deep toe impressions, almost like claws. They never camped there again, or anywhere for that matter. Then came the Kilkevin incident in 1994. Two wildlife rangers, Pat and Darren, were doing a late-night patrol along a remote fire trail in southeast Queensland. Their vehicle hit something. Not an animal, not a log, something massive, something that stood up. The headlights revealed a towering figure, covered in thick dark fur. It raised one arm and brought it down on the hood, crumpling metal like paper. The men, obviously terrified, sped off, radioing for help. But when a second team arrived, there was no sign of the creature, only the crushed front end of the truck and a deep, musky stench that lingered for days. They both resigned within the month. Skeptics dismissed these stories as hoaxes, hallucinations, or misidentified animals. But the accounts continue. Hundreds of them. Bushwalkers, hunters, farmers, even tourists. Different people, but it's always the same creature. And always the same fear. Some witnesses say the Yowie doesn't attack, at least at first. It watches you, follows. You might even hear its breathing just behind a tree. You might find your gear disturbed, scratches on your tent, stones arranged in strange patterns around your camp, a foul odor that comes and goes like a warning. And then, if you ignore the signs, it gets closer. In 2006, a woman named Lorraine was driving along a dark back road near Woodenbong. She saw what she thought was a man crossing the road, until it turned its head and she saw its eyes. Not human, and not an animal. They were cold and endless. It stopped and stood in the middle of the road, watching her. She didn't move. She didn't blink, and in that moment she said it was like the world stopped. There was no sound, no time, just her and the Yowie. When it finally stepped off the road and vanished into the trees, she sped off without ever looking back. To this day, she said she won't drive at night. But one of the most chilling theories is that the Yowie is still actively evolving, learning, and watching how humans respond, testing boundaries. And one day, it won't run from the spotlight, and it won't retreat into the shadows. It'll step forward. There are parts of Australia where no one lives, places where the trees stretch so tall they block the stars, and the only sounds at night are the rustling of leaves and the distant, mournful cry of something too big to be real. You might think you're alone out there, but the truth is, the bush isn't empty. Far from it. And if you find yourself deep in the wilderness, far from the road, and something starts following you, something just out of sight, don't call for help. Don't stop to listen. Because if it's the Yowie, it already knows where you are. And it's getting closer. And there are places deep in the Australian outback where the rocks don't echo, where even your own footsteps feel like an intrusion. The wind moves strange in these places. The shadows are longer than they should be. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you'll hear them whispering. Tall, thin, boneless, and almost invisible. They are the spirits of the stone. They are the Mimi. According to the Aboriginal people of Arnhem Land, the Mimi have lived in the cracks of the cliffs and the crevices of ancient stone since before humans ever walked the earth. They are older than memory, fragile as smoke, yet more powerful than anything you could ever imagine. They taught the first people how to hunt, how to sing, how to paint. But they are not benevolent. They are not human. And if you hear them calling your name, it's already too late. The Mimi are so thin they can slip between the narrowest cracks in the rock. It's said a strong gust of wind can blow one away, but only if it catches them by surprise. They don't walk, they float, glide, appear where they shouldn't. You might not see them at first, just a flicker in your peripheral vision, a tall, impossibly slender figure stretching into the sky before vanishing into the cliffside. And if you go looking for them, they'll show you what you were never meant to see. There's a cave deep in the top end of the Northern Territory. Locals don't go near it, but not because of wild animals or rugged terrain, but because of what happened there back in 1988. A small group of anthropology students went on a field trip, hoping to document ancient rock art. They weren't supposed to camp near the cliffs, but one of them insisted. That night, they lit a fire, drank, and laughed at the idea of spirits living in rocks. The next morning, one of them was missing. The other said he wandered off to relieve himself and never came back. Search teams were dispatched, but they found no trace of him. But they did find a new figure painted high on the wall of the cave, taller than the others and definitely more recent. It showed a man with his mouth open and a silent scream, surrounded by thin, dancing silhouettes. No one claimed responsibility for the painting, and no one camped there again. The Mimi are said to dance in the moonlight when the winds are still. They hum in tones only some can hear, long, droning chants that vibrate through the stone. Some say if you sleep too close to the cliffs, you'll dream of them. Others claim the Mimi climb into your thoughts, through the cracks in your skull, curling around your brain like smoke. And if they like what they find, they don't leave. There's a warning that's passed down in Arnhem land. Don't whistle near the cliffs after dark. Don't carve your name into the stone. And never take anything, not even a pebble. Because the Mimi remember everything. Every insult, every laugh, every step out of place. Some say their bones are carved from sandstone, that their thin eyes are too bright to look at directly, that they can stretch endlessly like shadows on dusk. But the scariest thing about them isn't how they look. It's what they do when they follow you. One traveler, a European photographer, was hiking alone through Kakadu in 2004. He was there to document cave art. In his final blog post, he described finding a cavern that wasn't marked on any map, and inside were paintings of long-limbed figures dancing, holding spears, and pulling something out of a human body. He said he heard laughter from deep within the cave, and thought it was a local guide playing a prank. He followed it inside. He never updated the blog again. A month later, a park ranger found his camera at the mouth of the cave. Most of the footage was damaged, but one photo remained. It showed the photographer holding the camera out in front of himself. Behind him was a figure, twice his height, thin as a reed and eyes hollow and shining, and arms that wrapped around the walls like vines. No one talks about that cave anymore. Some anthropologists argued the Mimi were never meant to be seen as real creatures. They say the spirits are metaphors, representing knowledge, art, and even storytelling. But even they agree there's something off about how detailed the paintings are, how fresh some of them look, even though they're supposedly thousands of years old, and how sometimes new ones appear after storms. And in the oldest of those paintings there are humans, always surrounded, always dwarfed by the Mimi, always with their mouths open in terror. Maybe the Mimi taught the first people. Maybe they shaped our culture, our stories, and our survival. Or maybe they weren't just shaping us. Or maybe they weren't just shaping us. So if you ever find yourself in the far north of Australia and the cliffs are too quiet, if you see strange shadows where there shouldn't be, and if you hear soft, echoing laughter in the stone, don't look, don't answer, don't stay, because once the Mimi know you can hear them, they won't stop whispering. And the longer you listen, the more you'll forget who you were. Until finally, you join them. It doesn't use claws. It doesn't have fangs. It doesn't chase its victims through the forest or stalk them in the dark. It simply waits. In the stillness of the Australian outback, in the twisted shadows beneath ancient fig trees, it perches in silence, watching, smiling, waiting for you to stop, to rest, to sit just long enough for it to drop. Its name is the Yara-Ma-Yha-Who, and it does not feed like anything you've ever heard of. According to Aboriginal legend, the Yara-Ma-Yha-Who is a small, red-skinned creature, child-sized, with a swollen head and enormous, lidless eyes. It has no teeth, no weapons. Its fingers and toes end in soft suction cups like the pads of a frog. That's how it feeds. It doesn't kill, at least not right away. It clings, it drains, then it swallows you whole, and if you're lucky, it spits you back out. But you're not the same. You'll never be the same. The stories say it lives in fig trees, old ones, the kind that grow thick and wide and twist like knotted muscle. It won't chase you through the forest, it just waits for you to rest beneath its tree. Maybe you're a traveler looking for shade. Maybe a hiker needing a break. You sit beneath its canopy, you close your eyes, just for a moment. And that's when it drops. The suction cups latch onto your arms and neck, and it begins to drink. Not blood exactly, but almost like your vitality, your strength. You lose the will to move, to fight. The more it feeds, the heavier you become, until your body goes limp and your breathing slows. Then it unhinges its mouth and swallows you whole. Still alive, still conscious. But the horror doesn't end there, because after a while, the Yara-Ma-Who regurgitates its victims, vomits them back out into the dirt, sticky and trembling and sick. It doesn't want to kill them yet. Not completely. The next time it finds you, it does it again and again. And each time you come back a little less human, a little shorter. Your skin turns red and your fingers lengthen into pads. And eventually you stop returning to your village. You climb into the fig tree and wait. People used to speak about entire forests where the trees were cursed, where travelers vanished without a trace. Sometimes their belongings were found near the roots. Their footprints simply stopped. No blood, no signs of a struggle, just silence and a tree that seemed fuller than before. There was one case in the 1950s, a young girl named Eliza who went missing while playing near a creek in the Northern Territory. They found her shoes by the edge of a fig tree grove. Search parties combed the area for days, but the only thing they ever found was a strange, rhythmic humming, low and wet, coming from high in the canopy. Decades later, hikers still claim they hear strange calls in that forest. Soft giggles like a child hiding behind the leaves. One man swears he saw a small figure up in the branches, completely red, with massive round eyes staring down at him. It smiled, then it melted back into the leaves without a sound, and he ran. Experts and skeptics have tried to explain the Yara-Ma-Who as a myth. Some say it was a way to scare children into staying away from fig trees, which can be dangerous, roots that trip and branches that fall. Others think it was a metaphor for disease or even fever. But others believe it's something darker. That this creature isn't just a warning, it's a cycle, a species, a parasitic mimic that multiplies by feeding and transforming its prey. And once you've been marked, once it's fed on you, you belong to it. You might escape once, maybe even twice, but the dreams will come. You'll start to see fig trees where there aren't any. You'll feel the pads on your fingers start to itch. You'll catch yourself watching strangers a little too closely. You'll laugh without knowing why. And one day, you'll disappear too. There's a story told in hushed tones by an elder from the East Coast about a boy who went missing in the 1930s. His parents found him 3 days later, naked and covered in dirt, sitting beneath a fig tree. He was smiling. He didn't remember anything, but from that day forward, he refused to eat meat. His skin became flushed and red. He began climbing trees at night. And by the time he was a teenager, his bones had become misshapen, and his voice was high and breathy. One morning, he simply disappeared. All they found was a single trail of tiny suction cup prints in the dirt, leading back to the forest, back to a tree. So the next time you're walking through the Australian bush, and you see a fig tree that's older than the others, twisted, darker than it should be, don't sit beneath it. Don't close your eyes and don't rest your back against its bark, because it's watching, and it's hungry. And once you've been tasted by the Yara-Ma-Who, you'll never truly be yourself, ever again.